Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I have another Tip Tuesday for you today. We're going to be talking about homeschooling kindergarten and elementary students. Now, I'm kind of combining the kindergarten and elementary a little bit together. I have a kindergarten curriculum, which you probably most of you know. It's K4, K5 kindergarten curriculum, and I'll show you a little bit of that in my talks today. And then I also have suggestions for elementary grade levels as well on my website, and I'll put a link to those below as well for you. It's really going to kind of depend on what your state requires as far as what you're teaching and how many hours you're doing school and all of those kinds of things. Our state requires that we do school average of 4 hours per day for 172 days each year, and that starts when your child hits age 6. So you'll just want to make sure you check with your state before kind of moving ahead on what you're going to teach and how long you're going to schedule out your day and all those kinds of things. I'm just going to talk about some basics on things that you should most likely be covering. Again, this might change based on your state, but just to kind of give you a jumping point on what to go with. So for kindergarten, one of the most important things to be working on at that time are reading skills. That's really going to be where they're going to be focusing. They're still learning how to read. You probably did a lot of alphabet work when they were in preschool and things like that, and now they need to really work on putting those letters together and just making sounds. Now, some students are ahead and they're already starting to read in kindergarten. Some students are not, and that is totally normal. I just want to hopefully encourage any of you out there whose kids are still having a hard time sounding out the letters and maybe putting a couple letters together and doing blends. How I like to teach reading is I teach the vowels first. If you've done my letter of the week curriculum, then you already know this, but I teach the vowels first, and then I will add in the consonants. And once I feel like my student is ready, I will have them start blending a consonant with a vowel. So for example, if they've learned all the vowel sounds and you get to the letter B, and now we're going to start with the consonants, they can put that B together and say, like, B and A says ba or ba or bit or ba or bet or whatever vowel you're going to put with it, but just start kind of putting those letters together. So we'll say the first sound and we'll say the second sound, and then we'll blend them together. Now, just be careful that you're not saying like B says ba, because B says B kind of, and it depends on what you add to the end of it as to what it's going to continue saying. And if you've really drilled that to your child that B says ba, they're going to be trying to say like B and A together as ba, you know, and so they're going to have this weird kind of inflection. Now, it will go away as they get used to reading more and things like that, but just try and be crisp when you're saying your letters and you're teaching them to them and how to blend them together. And then I think once you get through those initial blends and say they're comfortable blending in the two letters, then I like to add in a third letter. So we'll put like a T at the end. So we'll say b, at, bat, and we'll just kind of blend those together. Say it as many times as they need to, repeat it as many times as you need, and they'll eventually start getting the hang of it. Now, I want to say this because with every one of my kids, I started freaking out when they hit first grade and they were still sounding out words. They weren't reading like clearly, and for some reason I thought that they should be at that point, and almost every single one of them was still sounding out words through first grade. By the time they hit second grade, it's like something clicks, and a lot of them even will come in at the beginning of second grade, still having to sound out words, still kind of just struggling slightly. All of a sudden, overnight, it just clicks, and they're just reading. It's just like literally an overnight thing. And so I just want to encourage you that most kids don't just read right off the bat in kindergarten. Some do, and that's great. And if it is, then move ahead and challenge them more with their reading. If your child is still sounding out words, it's perfectly normal. So I just want to hopefully alleviate any fears that you have with kindergarten and first grade as far as reading goes. It really will start to pick up once they hit second grade. I believe it's just an age thing. They just finally get it, and I've not had any of my kids so far who just can't read beyond second grade. Now, I know there are some special cases out there where they need more reading help, and again, it is totally fine. Once they get older and they just get more confident, and the more you read to them and the more they read to you, it will just eventually click one day. So try not to stress out too much over the whole reading situation. Obviously, it's important to teach them how to read, but they will get it. It just takes a little bit of diligence and time on your part. It's one of the more frustrating things, I think, for kindergarten for me, because it's hard to sit there and listen to your child sound out every single letter and then try and, put things together, and then the next, that word will be again in the same sentence and they're sounding out again, and you're like, oh, you just read it. And as an adult, it can be really frustrating, but just take your time, slow down, let them sound out the letters, let them sound out the words, help them if they need it. read to them a lot. The more that you read to them, the more that they're going to kind of soak up how words sound and how letters sound and things like that. And it's just a back and forth kind of thing, especially in kindergarten when they're still really learning their letters. A lot of kids will come into kindergarten and not even knowing their letters yet. So, you know, just take it slow. Don't worry about it. They will eventually get it. Just keep working with them and just work on phonics, you know, just every day. Just review phonics that you've studied, add a new one, and just keep progressing like that. So that's my tips for teaching reading. I typically use either Abeka phonics and reading for once I hit first grade. I use my kindergarten, my K4 for my kindergartners. First grade I hit Abeka, or either that All About Reading and All About Spelling. Now I want to say that I have used them in conjunction. I get a lot of questions about this. I like the fact that Abeka has workbooks for them to work on, because when I'm doing All About Spelling or All About Reading, I'm kind of teaching them a lesson. I'm really engaged with them. I want to know that they can do it on their own, and so I do incorporate the Abeka workbooks into the All About Reading or All About Spelling lessons. Now, you don't have to do that. You could just pick one of those and be perfectly fine. I just kind of like to mix them, and since I've had them because of my older kids, I've just mixed them together, you know, and just reused them for my younger kids, and it's worked out really well. Abeka does introduce things slightly sooner than like the All About Reading program will, and if that's the case, then I just show them the new phonic from Abeka, we learn it, and then we just continue on with our lessons, and it's not a big deal. I have found that they actually work together fairly well. Again, it's a little bit overkill. You do not need to purchase 2 reading curriculums. That's just kind of what I've done in the past, mainly because I had both of them. And they're just 2 different styles. Abeka is really more flashcards and reading and worksheets. All About Reading is much more like, they have hands-on worksheets where they're kind of more playing games. It's very similar to the All About Spelling program. You know, they're kind of using tiles and putting things together. I will say, so that one's more hands-on than the Abeka one. However, I like the Abeka worksheets. I will say though that all of my kids have preferred the readers from All About Reading. The stories are just more fun, and I didn't think they would because the Abeka readers are colorful. The All About Reading readers are black and white. However, every single one of them likes the stories better. I guess they're just more fun, and they are illustrated. The illustrations are great, but they were black and white, so I didn't think they would care, but they do. They all really prefer those books. The stories are fun and interesting, and I will grab them for you and show you so you can kind of see the difference. So here's what the All About Reading books look like, and as you can see, they're just kind of black and white. They have really cute illustrations in them. I'll do a close-up for you. But they aren't, you know, they're all pencil illustrations, and so I didn't think my kids would be that into these. However, they are. This is what the Abeka readers look like, and they're colorful. They just have, you know, more kind of pictures and things like that. They also have comprehension questions at the end of their books, which is partially why I like the Abeka readers. However, once you get up into the higher levels, there are some comprehension questions that come with the teacher's manual for these as well. They just aren't in the actual book. So it just kind of depends on what you prefer. I think they're actually both great programs, and I don't necessarily think you can go wrong either way. This one is a little more hands-on with games. This one's a little more worksheet, flashcard oriented. So really, honestly, it just depends on what you prefer. Alright, so that's kind of what I do as far as reading goes. Now for kindergarten, I actually use my own kindergarten K4, K5 curriculum. This is full of pretty much everything you need to go through for kindergarten. Again, you'll want to check your state standards and make sure that whatever is included in here you're covering. If it's not, then just grab like whatever you might be missing or whatever and just add that into your curriculum. This one basically covers, we do Bible, we do that for every grade level. We also for sure cover math in this one. You're going to want to do a lot of numbers, counting, skip counting, number recognition. For kindergarten, you are going to want to start doing basic addition and basic subtraction. Nothing too complicated where you're carrying numbers and doing negatives and things like that, but just general concepts so that they're familiar with adding numbers and what that actually means. What does it mean to say you're going to add something? Because they see that plus symbol and it's like, I don't know what that is. But just show them with manipulatives, and in here there's all kinds of games like that where they're putting a certain amount of, you know, like say 3 you know, Cheerios, and they're going to put 2 more Cheerios and then scoot that all over, and how many Cheerios do you have total? And you can see that you're increasing your numbers when you're adding numbers together, and or if you're taking them away, that you're decreasing and you have less and things like that. So just the basic concepts of math, but do a lot of counting, get up to 100 at least for kindergarten, I would say. Once they get their counting down, we have a big number chart that has, you know, even numbers are blue and I think odd numbers are yellow or something. So then we'll start going through counting by 2s, 5s, 10s, things like that. So you don't have to get super complicated, but just do a lot of that number and just basic math skills. The next thing, like I said already, I mentioned you're going to want to cover reading skills, just sounds, blending letters together. Just get those basics of blending sounds together, and then familiar with all the different letters and all the sounds that they make, whether it's their, you know, capital letter or lowercase letter, things like that, so they're really comfortable, because once you hit the end of kindergarten and into 1st grade, it really gets more intense with the reading lessons, and they just need to already have those things mastered so that they're not still forgetting, like, oh, I don't know what this letter says. So just do a lot of that kind of review. And one of the questions I get a lot about my Letter of the Week curriculum in particular is how much review there is in it. Some kids can get kind of bored if they're ready to move on, and that's totally fine. You can maybe alternate out what games you do for the preschool, but the key is repetition. When you are little and you are learning something like that, the more you do it, the more it's going to stick and the more you're going to remember it. And the repetition is actually in there on purpose, because you want them to just have those things down pat, so that when they start reading, they're not having to think back about what the M says. They just know it already because they've done it so many times. It's just a second nature to them. If they're still not sure because you've only covered it a few times and you thought it was too much repetition or whatever, and they just don't get it, when you move on to the next letter, they're going to forget that one and they're just going to learn the one they're on. But if you have done it repeatedly and repeatedly, and every day you're reviewing and reviewing, and even though it seems like annoying, just keep reviewing, because that way once you get into actual reading lessons, they're going to have those down. They're not going to have to think about it at all, and reading will go much smoother and much easier for you. So if you haven't done that already, when you are starting kindergarten, make sure that you start out your year just reviewing the letters and making sure that they have all the sounds down before you try and rush them into reading. Otherwise, reading will be very frustrating for them, and they're not only trying to remember what that letter says, but now they're trying to kind of blend it with another letter, and they're trying to remember what that letter says, and it can just be really frustrating. So if you have somebody who's struggling with reading and really frustrated, go back to the basics and make sure they know all the sounds down pat. Just, you know, bam, 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 they can just do them. They don't have to think about them before you move on, and I think that will help you out. So Bible, math, and reading so far. The next thing that we cover is handwriting, and we do a lot of handwriting in kindergarten, and mainly just to get their fine motor skills down and just, you know, get all those muscles growing in their hands so that they can move on to, you know, the next grades and the next grades where they're having to do smaller letters, and then eventually they'll be starting to do cursive. Now, I like to do cursive in 3rd grade. I know people who have done it sooner. I have seen people do it in kindergarten. I personally don't like to do that because I think they need to know how to print first. Cursive can also be kind of intimidating. Just all those letters blending together can visually be really confusing for kindergartners because they can't see where one stops and one starts. So I really like to get them familiar with their letters and manuscript letters first before we move into kindergarten. But whatever your child is ready for is totally fine. You know, some kids are ready to move on sooner than others. Mine were not. Their fine motor skills just weren't quite there in, you know, 1st grade for sure, and even 2nd grade they were kind of ready, but 3rd grade I found that handwriting in particular, they were totally ready to move on to kindergarten. But the more practice that you do, even coloring and all of that kind of thing will work on their fine motor skills, and they'll be ready to move on. So we do letters, we do numbers, we do drawings, tracing, dot to dots, anything like that where they're actually, you know, writing and having to control their movements and going from one place to the next purposefully, not just scribbling. So we do a lot of handwriting for kindergarten. The next thing that I like to do is art, because I really like to have, especially for elementary years, just a nice, well-rounded curriculum. Art is always fun. Almost everyone likes it. We do lots of different things. I have done my World's Greatest Artist units with them. I did a How to Teach Children book with them, and that was more techniques like drawing lines and what you can do with different lines and shapes and things like that. We have also done the DVD videos from See the Light or Home Art Studio. Those are great. It gets you into a lot more mediums like pastels and paints. We do Play-Doh, anything like that where they're getting to be creative. It's a nice creative outlet, and I have found that if you can provide some kind of a creative outlet, that actually helps all of their other skills as well. And so we do a lot of different art projects throughout the year. We'll do seasonal art, and then we try a lot of different mediums. You know, do art with crayons, do crayon resist. I like the pastels. The chalky pastels can be really messy. The oil pastels aren't as messy, but you get different looks from them, and you can blend them. So just try a lot of different techniques and mediums and things like that. And I don't know that it specifically matters what art project or program you use when you're in kindergarten or even first grade, elementary level. I like to do the DVDs for the little bit higher elementary levels, like 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because they're just a little bit more involved, and I like to have somebody else kind of doing that for me. For the little kids, especially kindergarten, just bust out the paint and the Play-Doh and the sand and all that kind of fun stuff, and just let them kind of have at it. So I don't think you have to do anything super formal, but I do add in art for sure, especially for the younger grades, and then older. We have done it through 5th grade as well, just because my kids all liked it. And then as they get older, we do other things like classes and things like that. The other thing that we always add in as well is music. Now, I do have a composer's curriculum that goes through all of the world's greatest, not all of them, but a selection of the world's greatest composers, and they listen to the music and they color in instruments. They learn about the different sections of like orchestras, you know, the different instruments, the sounds they make, and I think that's a great thing to do in the elementary level years, just because it's a great introduction to music. It's not too overwhelming, but they learn different styles and different instruments and maybe where their interests might lie. We also will listen to music a lot of times in our homeschool room while they're doing other subjects, just because it's kind of calming. It gets everybody kind of, you know, just focused, and it can cut down on all of the other chaos and noise as well. So I like to do that as well. So definitely like to incorporate movement, and if you have preschool and kindergarten, I for sure like to incorporate movement with music. So I have recommended before the but Kids in Motion, that's what they're called, Kids in Motion CDs, and they have music and they tell you what to do with your body, and it kind of goes with the music. And some of them are to walk like an elephant, or to make your body in this shape, or, you know, whatever. But anyways, it's a lot of fun. It gets them out of their chairs, gets them moving around, and it just gets them kind of just moving with the music. It's a fun activity to do, so definitely suggest those for my kindergartners for sure. I think first graders might think it's a little goofy, but maybe not. So give it a try. The other thing that we do a lot of work on in kindergarten, and not as much in 1st through 5th grade, but is motor skill, like fine motor skills. Now, I mentioned the writing, but there's also things like cutting with scissors, pasting, you know, just gluing something down in a specific spot is working on their motor skills and their hand-eye coordination. I have a lot of, you know, they can do lacing. You might introduce sewing, or just anything that is going to get them kind of using those fine motor skills and just being more purposeful with their actions and what they're doing and where they're placing things. So cutting out things and then pasting them all together, things like that, is great for kindergarten. And you can do that a lot in your art as well, so you can kind of combine some of these skills into your other subjects as well. The other thing I like to add for kindergarten is logical thinking skills. So that would be things like mazes. There is a game out there called Logic Links, which is really cool. You probably would have to help your kindergartner. They have easier cards and harder cards, but they give you these little markers, colored markers, and then the card will tell you, okay, arrange them in this order. So, and it's clues, so it's critical thinking skills, and it's like, okay, pull red, blue, and green. Now set the red, you know, the red needs to be to the right of the blue, but not to the left of the green. And they give you clues, and they have to kind of organize the tabs based on the clues, and then the solution, I think, is on the bottom of the card or something, or on the back, I can't remember. But anyways, things like that. Sudoku for little kids, crossword puzzle, or not crossword puzzles, word searches, things like that. The other game that I have for logical thinking that we really like are called Color Cube activities, and I will try and link all this stuff below. So one of the other logic thinking skills I like to do are these color cube cards. So there's these color cubes, and they have pictures on what your child needs to build, and then it comes with, or you have to purchase something maybe, but they're these 1-inch wooden color cubes. And we actually use these for a lot of things. When they're in preschool, I have them make patterns or separate out the colors and things like that. But what's cool about these cards is they start off easy, where they're just one-dimensional images, and they just have to copy it. Then once you get to the harder cards, there's actually blocks that are hidden in the back that you can't see in the initial picture that are required in order to build this type of a puzzle. And so it just requires some extra logical and critical thinking skills on how you're going to get this built to look like this image, and even though you're going to have to add some things that maybe you can't see. So these are really cool, and the cards, these are, I'll link them below, but these are from Learning Resources and Color Cube task cards. The other thing that they have in here are just shapes. I don't know if you can see, see this. There we go. So they're just these shapes, but they don't tell you what cubes to use. And then your student has to actually fit the shapes to make this particular shape on their table or whatever. So they're just all kinds of different. Here's like one of the easier ones. It's just a flat design. So they're just all kinds of different designs and skill levels, and these are actually really cool. And the kids love having, you know, after having to do reading and math and kind of some boring worksheets, they love having things like this in their work drawers for the day, because it's just a little bit of a break from the norm, and it gives them something, you know, more hands-on to do, but they're still really working on skills, so it's fun for them, but they're still working on those logical thinking skills. I did show you already in my K4 kind of walkthrough, we do a lot of sight word practice. And for kindergarten, the words are pretty easy, but they're words they're going to see a lot in their reading. So the, and, you know, stuff like that is, if some of the of, because, you know, I don't know about the English language, but they have some crazy sounds in there. And phonics it works to a certain point, but there's so many exceptions. So it really helps out, especially with their reading, if they're learning some of those more high frequency words and they just can like see that word and know what it is without having to sound it out. So we do a lot of sight word practice. I read it to them all the time. We review it with the flashcards. We write it down on the tracers, or once they're ready, you can have them write it without the tracers, all those kinds of things. So lots of sight word practice. And then we do a lot of vowel sounds and blends and things like that with the reading. And then there's just a lot of other hands-on things that you can add in. So anywhere that you can find things like time, money, I kind of tend to do time and money spread out through kindergarten and into first grade, because sometimes the counting money can get really difficult, especially if they're still learning how to skip count. You know, it's hard to count nickels when you don't know how to skip count by 5 yet and things like that. So I kind of add those things in as we get through those processes, and once they're comfortable counting by 5s, then we're like, oh, we'll add in the money and show them what a nickel looks like, and we'll count out those monies, and then once they get to the point where they can add, you know, dimes and pennies and nickels and things like that. One of the curriculum that I really like for time and money in particular are the Kumon books. It's Kumon, and I just buy those as a supplement off of Amazon or wherever. I've also seen them in Barnes & Noble and things like that. And they're just worksheets, and they have the colored pictures, which I like. So some of the workbooks are just black and white, and it's hard to tell the difference between money when it's not like the correct color and size and all those kinds of things. So I do like those. They're in color. They also have fun mazes and things like that. And so a lot of times when I feel like they're ready, first-ish grade, somewhere in there, I will add in a lot more time and money, and I'll just have them do one of those worksheets a day, or we'll get out our fake money and I'll just throw a little bowl in their drawer over here, and just every day I'll just grab kind of a handful of random coins and maybe $1 bill or two and throw them in there, and then they just count it out and they add it onto you know, like a little notepad or something like that every day, and then I can check it to make sure they're counting right. So just things like that. You know, you want to just get them into just the basics, especially in kindergarten, of things like that. You don't need to get too involved. Once they hit first grade, second grade, you can do a lot more with counting larger sums of money, things like that. So here is my daily learning notebook. Now I do incorporate this for kindergarten all the way through elementary school. Sometimes I'll let them take a break, because once they're in elementary and they've done these so much, it can kind of just get repetitive, and as long as they're doing well with them, then I don't make them do it every day. But kindergarten, preschool, first grade for sure, I like to have them doing these. They are basically, these are free downloads on my website, and they get harder as you go. This is a preschool one, so they have tracing of numbers. I have cards down here where they can write the day in, but I also have a traceable cards as well. They do a lot of number practice. What's today's date? What was yesterday? What's the next day going to be? They do a lot of there's time activities on here. What time is it? What time was it an hour ago? What time will it be in a couple of hours? Make the date in coins, or there's a how much money thing here, and this is where I might throw that kind of handful of coins in their drawer and have them count it out, and they can write it here if they want. Or you can have them use the date. So for example, if today is January 5th, you know, the date would be, say, 5. And so they could do either 1 nickel, 5 pennies, or if it's like a larger number, you know, they can start adding in dimes and quarters and things like that. So that's kind of a fun little challenge for them. I also have a weather thing here where they can kind of draw what would be appropriate to wear during that month. And then actually there's a lot more. I don't have them in here because she did them all, but there's a lot more activities in the daily learning notebook where they're writing their names, they're doing tally marks, and all kinds of stuff like that. And it's just a quick little flip through that they do in the morning, and it just kind of covers like a variety of just kind of skill sets. It's a little bit more fun than just having to do them on like a boring worksheet or whatever, and they can do this so just to kind of get their day started. So these are for, like I said, I have them all the way through elementary school, and then I also have a bunch of languages as well. So I think I have Spanish, French, German. That might be it for right now. So if you're interested in translating in another language, let me know. But it's really nice to have these, and they're all free, so you can go on my website, search them. They're on my right sidebar, and then just pick the level that's best for your students. So, all right, so I think I covered pretty much everything for kindergarten and elementary levels. Now, I do have, like I said, specific curriculum recommendations for all of the different grade levels on my website. So I'll link to that below, but you can just go and search, like, you know, 6th grade curriculum picks or 3rd grade curriculum picks, and you'll see what we use, our curriculum, and then you'll see our top picks, which are things that we recommend that we have used in the past that we like, that we maybe didn't use this year or whatever. So you can just see what we've done through all of the different levels. Now, I have a preschool and a kindergarten curriculum. I do not have curriculum from kindergarten and up, just because I like to, once I hit 1st grade, start mixing in a different variety of different things, and I just like different things from different vendors, and I didn't feel like I needed to recreate that myself. So we do a variety of different things, but you can see what all of that is. I think I covered the basics as far as skills and just overall general subjects that you're going to want to cover for kindergarten and elementary school. One thing I will say is that once you get into junior high, it stops being quite as much hands-on and fun, and your kids aren't quite as young anymore, so they're not into some of that stuff. So I would definitely take the time to have more fun when they're still in elementary school. Pick curriculum that is hands-on, you know, lots of projects, lots of fun things for them to do, where they can actually experience different things versus just constantly sitting down and maybe doing boring worksheets, because it's not that exciting. And I think, you know, they can learn off of that, but they learn a lot more when they're building things with their hands or doing projects. You still have a lot of freedom with what you teach when they're that age, and so it's a great time to just make their learning a lot more fun and engaging and hands-on. So I definitely suggest that. Once you get into middle school and high school, it gets a lot more serious, and it can still be hands-on and engaging. It's just in a different way, sort of. So I like to keep my kindergarten and elementary just a lot of fun and a lot of hands-on kind of building and just getting involved in life activities. So I hope that helps you out as far as kindergarten, elementary school, what to teach while you're homeschooling. I have an actual specific list of all the different subjects to cover per grade level in my Homeschooling 101 book, which is right here. There's lots of information in this book. It covers all kinds of different grade levels, you know, tips, tricks, things like that, how to get started, how to choose curriculum, etc., etc. So I also have a video on this if you want to see it. I'm not going to go into it too much, but there's a lot more detail in here on what to teach for kindergarten and elementary school and things like that in this book. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me or leave a comment below. And let's see, yeah, that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to email me or leave a comment below. If you have any great ideas to teach for kindergarten or elementary school, or curriculum that you've liked, also make sure to leave a comment below so other people can see that as well. So I hope you enjoyed this Tuesday, and I will see you next time.